What's really going on with Auburn's quarterback room?
In the world full of podcasts, he's the undisputed heavyweight champion of hot takes, an Auburn sports homer, master of the boog, and message board legend. Get your buttons buttoned and your hats flattened because the Top Button Podcast is about to kick off. And you don't want to miss your courtside seat. Now, here's your host, Charlie Five.
We're back. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie Five, and we are ready to get after it. We're going to talk about the quarterback room. We've talked about a lot of different positions. We're going to break down what's actually going on in this quarterback. I don't even want to call it a battle. It doesn't really feel like a battle, but what's going on with Jackson Arnold? What's going on with Deuce Knight? What's going on with Ashton Daniels? We're going to break it all down here in just a second. But before we do that, let's give a quick shout out to rowback.com. Use coupon code BARN20 to take 20% off your order. Polos, hoodies, shorts, joggers, doesn't matter. They got something for you. If you want to go zany with some crazy prints, fun prints, they got that. If you want to go classic with solids or stripes, they got that kind of stuff too. So show them some love, save big. It's rowback.com. I got my man Lance Dahl on here with us today. He's been at every single practice. He stood in for me whenever I couldn't be there, and we've been there together, and we've seen these Tigers practice. We've seen fall camp kick off. Before we jump into the quarterback talk, Lance, just overall, what's your vibe right now as far as what you've seen? How you feeling?
Well, I'll say this first and foremost. I was not here in the spring. I did not get a chance to see Arnold or the receiver room or the off or anything about this team. I've been doing this, going to practices, covering Auburn football. This is going to be my 5th season, and hands down, this is the most polished I've seen Auburn's passing game, like by far, when it comes to just the mechanics of the quarterbacks, the timing, the accuracy, the plays that the receivers are making. And it's not just one guy, it's multiple guys in this room. The vibes for me are just immaculate on that side of the ball, specifically because it's as good as I have ever seen it. And I think if you're a fan, you hear stuff like that, you see the reports coming out just about how good this team could be because of the fact that they've got all these different weapons. And I mean, there's no reason to not be really excited. The vibes right now, I think, are pretty high.
Pretty high. I love it. Look, you know as well as I do, Auburn fans don't really need an excuse to call for a backup quarterback. It seems like anything that's remotely a sign of maybe troubled waters, it's immediately call for the backup. It's been that way for, I guess ever since maybe Jarrett Stidham is maybe the last time where you felt confident about who the guy was. And not to say that there's been, a lot of negative reporting around Jackson Arnold. There have been some concerns about how the offense has looked at times. Does he hold the ball too long? This, that, and the other. I want to ask you, Lance, you've seen a lot of the 11 on 11 and all, everything else that you can possibly see in the availability periods that we've been given. Do you feel like Jackson is winning the job, or do you just feel like he's not losing the job? And could those things mean the same? I just love to get your overall take on that based off what you've seen.
I think that he is winning the job just based on the circumstances around him, right? He's already started a year in the SEC at quarterback at a place in Oklahoma that saw a lot of really tough competition, and despite the fact that he was throwing to plumbers essentially for the time that he was out there. I mean, Arnold was still making plays. This is not something like we're walking into this year with an unknown, unproven 5-star commodity where he's going to have to go out there throughout fall camp in the first few weeks of the season and prove it. Like, he is on paper, and then just based on what we've seen, the guy for Auburn, and he should be. I mean, again, it's just based off of his resume and just based off of what we have seen, the very little we've seen as far as him with this receiver room. Now, again, like you said, not every quarterback is going to be perfect. There have been missed throws. There have been miscommunications. There have been, the negatives. But I'll say this to go back to what I was saying to start the show. Relative to the past half decade of Auburn football, just based on what I've seen through fall camp, I think there's a higher floor. with a player like Jackson Arnold at quarterback, just because, again, I think the mechanics are better. I think you're seeing more wow throws than mistakes, which is not something I think you could have said about this quarterback room, or that at least their starting quarterback in the past. So when I look at Arnold, when I watch the way that he's operating through camp, I think that he is winning this quarterback battle, despite the fact that maybe Auburn's backup options are better than they have been in the past. It doesn't necessarily mean just because Auburn's got better options and better depth, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, we have to usurp the guy that we've chosen here. We've paid handsomely and we've gone out and found in the portal. I think that his play in the past and currently is speaking for itself. I think he is winning this job.
I love it. It feels like this is the first year in maybe the last, I guess you got to go back maybe to Bo Nix.
Right.
Even to Bo Nix, go back and it's the quarterback that sucks the least. It seems like is who has been the guy over the last 4 to 5 years. So it feels good to see and hear, and I agree with everything you said. Hear that not only is Jackson performing at a level that he should be, a consensus, the number one guy, but he's doing it against guys that are actually having really good fall camps as well. There's been a lot of praise on Deuce, and we're going to talk about Deuce in a little bit. And there's been a ton of praise, especially lately, around Ashton Daniels. I think all of that ought to, like you said, get you excited about this quarterback room in general. Regardless, anytime you hear anything about Deuce, particularly Deuce in this scenario, it's not so much Ashton Daniels, but really anytime you hear anything positive about Deuce, there's just a faction of the Auburn fan base, and this may be every fan base. I don't exactly know because I don't really follow other fan bases that closely. But if you hear anything positive out of a backup, there's going to be a faction that want to play the backup. The backup quarterback is always the most popular player on the team. So between now and kickoff, I don't know if it's possible to become the unanimous, like everybody rallies behind Jackson Arnold. I don't know if that's possible with this fan base. We're just a little bit too fractured and we're a little bit too hurt. Like we have scar tissue that we're still working through. What do you think he's got to do? Like, what do you got to hear from Jackson between now and kickoff to where you're like, everybody's like, there's no doubt we're riding with this guy. And it's not like the first time he throws an interception, we're calling for the backup. Like, this is the guy, and we know we're riding with him.
Well, I think two things have to happen here, one positive and one negative. We'll start with the negative here, and it's kind of what you alluded to earlier. It's in the past, Auburn's kind of had to go with the guy that you sucked the less essentially at quarterback. First and foremost, there has to be separation in terms of Deuce Knight and Ashton Daniels just simply are not competing at the level that Jackson Arnold is, whether it be mistakes, again, miscommunications, inaccuracy, just making the wrong decisions as the signal caller there out on the field whenever they get opportunities. They have to show their inexperience, or at least to some degree, just not show what Jackson Arnold is showcasing, which is the second part of what needs to happen here. The positive side of it, Jackson Arnold has the ability to go out there and show out. I really do believe that. And as camp goes on, I think he's going to get more and more opportunities to prove that as he continues to build a repertoire with this first team offense going up against a very solid defense. You mentioned earlier that he's competing against Knight, he's competing against Daniels, but also at the same time, he's competing against what should be one of the better secondaries in the SEC, one of the better, I think, pass rushes in this conference. So there's a lot of pressure on Arnold to succeed, but he's got the tools around him to actually make that progress. And so he's got to have some flashes in camp, whether it be some dazzling throws, whether it be him impacting the game on the ground. I think all three of Auburn's quarterbacks could do that this season if they were asked to. So it's twofold. It's the guys behind him taking a step back, and it's Arnold taking hopefully multiple steps forward here as we get closer to the opener.
Do you feel like, based off what you've seen so far, that's happening? Like, or that's close to happening? Or do you still feel like there's a little bit of work left to be done if you want to get to that unanimous no doubter for QB1?
There's work left to be done. I think both in Arnold's camp and then also the fact that Daniels and Knight, I mean, they've had some incredible throws. I think there was one throw from Daniels to the corner of the end zone during the practice on Saturday. That was, I think, my favorite throw of the day. I mean, he was out there throwing lasers throughout the course of practice, as was Knight at various points. So it's not to say, by the way, that Arnold has had a bad day. I think he had some really nice throws into tight windows as well. I think I noted that over on the barn, but it's really right now, he's going to win the job, but as far as like separation in terms of how well all three of these quarterbacks have performed, it's not a significant margin because those two guys have just kind of stepped up and balled out at various points during camp. So Arnold has to continue to take those steps and just to be more consistent. Like I mentioned, kind of emphasizing that higher floor here. But my expectation is that he ends up showing that.
Love it. I love it. We're going to talk about the number 2 guy now. Okay, let's talk about the number 2 guy. Who is that? What does that look like? And then how do you handle Deuce moving forward? Because obviously he is such an incredible talent. We'll talk about that in just a second. We'll be back right after this. All right, Lance, let's talk about the number 2 quarterback. I feel like if you ask 5 people on their opinion on who number 2 is, you may get 5 different answers, but you've been there just as much as anybody based off of, I guess, where they go in the rotations. Is there a clear cut number 2 right now, or do you have an opinion, or is it pretty obvious who the number 2 guy is?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. It's John Colvin. It's the GOAT. No, but for real,
I think he's left. He's a lefty too, isn't he?
And he's been spinning it too in practice. That's something else I'll say. Auburn's 4th string guy. I mean, hey, they've got some depth there. No, but seriously, that is the question, right? And throughout fall camp, it feels like Auburn's kind of swapped back and forth between those 2 guys, giving those 2 guys opportunities with the second team, with some different guys that would work their way onto the first team. Auburn being extremely cautious, it feels like, with some of their starters are big time players. And so they've kind of reserved them either to the second team or just not really played them at all. So Daniels and Knight have gotten the opportunity to perform with some of these high end skill position players, specifically at receiver. They've both made plays. They've both, I think that during the practice here on Monday, you saw a couple of big runs from Deuce Knight. You saw Ashton Daniels make a couple of plays through the passing game. Both of these guys have performed, I think, at a very similar level. And like Freese said, I believe last week, both of these guys, it's not necessarily about who's your backup quarterback, who's number 2. It's more of okay, where can we use these guys situationally? Can we find some packages for both of them to get in? Because to be honest with you, as it stands today, if Auburn wanted to run a second quarterback out there for some sort of series or plays, I don't really know who they would go with because, again, Daniels has just played at a higher level than I expected him to coming in from Stanford. The stats weren't that great. Stanford wasn't a very good team a season ago, but, man, Daniels has impressed, I think, at various spots. So it's right now, I think it's very tight as to whether or not Deuce wins that job or Ashton wins that job to me. If I had to pick a guy, to be honest with you, I would probably go with Ashton Daniels just because I really like what I've seen from him as a passer. That's not to say Deuce has looked bad. That's just a personal opinion. I've seen some other people say Knight. This is not me just trying to disagree just to disagree. It's just I like both options. So it is a tough, if you had to pick, I think it's a tough guess, but we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. See if Ashton or Knight can create some separation.
That seems to be like the biggest battle of the offseason. I feel like that number 2 quarterback spot. I think that's obviously going to be very, very interesting to watch unfold. And I don't know. I wonder once game time is here. I hate the idea of packages. I hate that. Like I really don't. I wish Hugh would have never even said that. I don't want to see like a series in a tight game when the game's still in hand where we're rotating quarterbacks. Like I've had a terrible taste in my mouth ever since we tried red zone Robbie and all that good stuff. So hopefully that's not the case. But I wonder if, like, from game to game, let's say a game gets out of hand, like situationally, you got to have a plan for who goes in first. So I think situationally, that could vary from game to game. And then obviously you got the injury question. If something were to happen, heaven forbid, to Jackson, who goes in? And does timing early in the season favor one guy more so than timing later in the season favoring another? That's all those questions. I don't think there's any wrong answer to those questions. There's a lot of different opinions there. I want to talk about Deuce in general for a second. I've seen a lot of people that make the claim similar to something along the lines of you got to give the second quarterback job to Deuce, because if you don't, you could lose him to the portal. I want to get your thought. I've seen that actually multiple times. I want to get your thoughts on that take in general. And then I guess, how do you handle Deuce? Like, how do you handle a five-star quarterback nowadays? Like, how do you make sure if Ashton does get the number 2 job, like, how do you keep him engaged? That seems to be, one of the bigger challenges as a head coach now, is trying to figure out how to keep these super talented guys engaged when maybe they're not ready 100% to be the guy right away.
Yeah, so I want to say this first really quickly, just about like you were mentioning real quick with packages and certain stuff like that Auburn could throw out there. It doesn't exactly go hand in hand with what Hugh Freeze has been saying about giving his starting quarterback confidence.
No, it doesn't.
Exactly. I mean, like if you want to build as much confidence as possible with your QB, you're never going to pull him off the field ever for any situation, because Arnold, I think, has the complete package. He can throw it, he can run it, he can dissect coverages, he can put it into tight window. He is the complete quarterback. You don't need somebody else, at least not right now, to go in and fill in and be that guy. So it doesn't exactly go hand in hand with what he's been saying, which I find interesting. But as far as Deuce goes, with him possibly transferring or anything like that, look, I don't know how Auburn was able to keep Perry Thompson under wraps. I don't know how they were able to keep all this talent here at the receiver room, because it feels like an embarrassment of riches compared to what Auburn has been for forever. Just the history of their program. They've never had a receiving core like this. I don't know how they're able to keep it all together, but my assumption is that this time next season, they're going to be able to either make some sort of financial pitch to Deuce, or they're going to be able to make some sort of promise or some sort of similar pitch to Knight as well, to get him to stay on the team, at least for one more season, to develop, be that second guy, and then in his junior season, possibly go out there and ball out. Or who knows, maybe Arnold goes elsewhere. Whatever happens, maybe you see Deuce during his sophomore season next year. So I don't necessarily buy into the, if he doesn't get to be the backup quarterback, so to speak, that he's going to transfer, because for all we know, Freeze is keeping it pretty ambiguous with those two guys, Daniels and Knight, to begin with, right? He could not just be like, hey, both of you guys are 2A and 2B, right? And so it doesn't really matter if I tab you the second overall guy or the third overall guy. You're just kind of the backups in case we need you. And that maybe they're not affected by that. So I don't necessarily buy into the, if he's not labeled as, assistant to the regional manager here, he's going to bounce elsewhere. But, maybe he does. I think that as far as keeping 5-star freshmen happy in this day and age, I think there's one thing that can certainly keep them happy and satisfied and keep them around, and that's money. And
show me the money.
I think Auburn has that. That's not a hot take. I think Auburn would have the ability to keep him satisfied financially, and maybe that's, who knows, maybe we're all just speculating, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but maybe that's what it kind of boils down to, is, hey, we give you a fat check and you stick around for another season.
Yeah, and I think people also, I don't give Deuce enough credit for understanding the assignment. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So obviously, signing day is the first in high school, is the first Wednesday or whatever in December. It's early in December, and it gives the guys able to lock in their scholarship spots. But it doesn't mean, like with the transfer portal now, like somebody could sign in December, enter the transfer portal shortly thereafter if they see something they don't like, and then go somewhere else. And it's not that hard. And it's honestly, it may be easier to do it then, because you haven't moved anywhere yet. You're only going to move one time. So Deuce signs with Auburn out of high school at the beginning of December. Ashton Daniels commits December 16th. pretty clearly obvious that Auburn's wanting that guy to be coming in to be a one-year backup. And then they turn around and get Jackson Arnold shortly thereafter, who it's pretty clear is a 2-year guy, because as soon as he signed, Walker White went into the portal and said they brought in a 2-year guy instead of a 1-year guy. So Deuce has seen all this happen before he enrolls in January. He could have gone to Ole Miss. He could have gone to Notre Dame. Even after he signed his scholarship to Auburn, he could have just gone into the portal and done it. So I think people have to give Deuce a little bit more credit that he may be okay with waiting. He may be okay. He may think it's a really good – he's in a really good spot that maybe somewhere in that sophomore year or even taking over his junior year is the most ideal scenario. And he's not wanting to go in and ruin his confidence or ruin any chance he has needing the development by going in too early. I just think people are not giving Deuce enough credit. I think Deuce is a pretty mature dude. I think there's a ton of pressure on him to flip for the longest time. And I think he waited and did all his research and tried his best to give Auburn every opportunity to win a dadgum game for him to before he pulled the trigger. But at the end of the day, I think people just have to say, you know what, maybe Deuce just sees things different than we think everybody else in his spot sees things. So I'm not sold that he is just like on the fast track to play right away or I'm out of here. Am I crazy there?
No, and I think that kind of gets lost in the current state of college athletics as a whole, is that you can still have those players that have that mentality of, I come to a school, I stay there, I committed to this place, and I develop. And whenever I get my opportunity to perform, I was in waiting, I was preparing, and then I excel whenever I actually get onto the field. It's not that I'm trying to get thrown into the fire as quickly as possible because it's all about me, 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 me. I want playing time. I want money. I want the fame. I want the attention. I want all of that. Maybe people like Knight, if that's truly the case, are looking at this and saying, hey, I want to be able to come in, take my time with this, and really learn how to perform as a college athlete before I have to go out there and show it. Because as we've seen at places like Auburn and across top tier places in college football, you can have a pretty short leash. And so if Deuce was thrown into the fire, he didn't perform well, that could have been all she wrote. It could have been a few games in his freshman season. He could have transferred to some group of 5 school and he could have never been heard from again. He could be, JT Daniels ended up at Rice. I mean, that could be his situation. So if that's truly how he is approaching this, which just based on what's currently happening, kind of based on what we've heard, just about how important focusing on football is over everything is to him, maybe that's truly the approach. And if it is, I respect that.
For sure. Good stuff, man. I really appreciate it. Real quick, I mean, we totally forgot. Alabama and Georgia, our biggest rivals, both of those guys are going to start quarterbacks that have been at their respective schools for more than just 1 year. They've been there for a while. So we can actually point to examples just on our schedule of that being the case. So great stuff, Lance. All the stuff you've been doing over in the barn, helping us cover practice, has been fantastic. But tell everybody where they can find you and support you. Yeah,
absolutely. You can find me over at the barn covering all things Auburn football, Auburn basketball, whenever the season rolls around here in the next few months. Really excited to get that going. You can also follow me on Twitter at @Lance_, if you would like. Going to be posting a lot as football season gets rolling here in just a few weeks. We're so close, man. I'm so excited to be back.
I'm ready for practice on Thursday. I'm ready to get back out there. So I'll see you there, obviously. So, guys, thanks for listening. We'll be back again soon. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. Stay buttoned.
Thanks for listening, and drive home safely.